Live Cricket.
A very good evening. Welcome to 5 Live Cricket with me, Henry Moran. And after the high of last week, this morning, England beaten in the second test against India in Visakhapatnam. Set 399 to win, bowled out for 292. Jasprit Bumrah inspiring India across the test match. It leaves it all with England level in the series at 1-1, as they were at this point in 2021. We'll be dissecting the test over the next 50 minutes or so, assessing where it leaves everything. Going into that 10-day break, England heading to Abu Dhabi, the third test in Rajkot, and England heading to the Middle East. Golf clubs, I imagine, in tow. With me this evening, a pair of former England spinners in Phil Tufnell and Alex Hartley. Also, we're joined by the Sussex head coach and former England assistant, Paul Farbrace. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Henry.
Hello, Tuffers. Well, come on then. For me, I don't know, my overriding feeling today, Tuffers, is missed opportunity. You look at who's missing for India. Virat Kohli, KL Rahul, Ravi Jadeja. Did they miss a chance?
Well, I think perhaps they did a little bit. I think India were a bit rattled after that first Test match. Fantastic double 100 by Jaswal was the difference with the runs, and then you've got another fella called Jasprit Bumrah who just bowled magnificently, reverse swinging it and doing all sorts at 90 miles an hour. But it was a good Test match. I think England they'll be sort of happy with the way they played. They talk a lot about process, don't they? And sort of like going towards the same thing. This is how we're going to play. I think if they would have turned up today and been sort of bowled out and, hundreds behind, but they put up a good fight, and to score 300 in the fourth innings in India, I think they'll take away a lot of positives from that. But you're right, I got the feeling that, the toss was handy, wasn't it, for India to win that toss? If England could have gone out there, made first use of it. But yeah, perhaps a few missed opportunities, but I think they're going to be sitting around the pool or on the sort of like the par 3 on the third, and I think they'll be sort of quite happy. They'll go away, recharge, and come again, for the third Test match.
Alex, come on then. We've sort of been getting up in the wee small hours following this game. It's sort of created a kind of a mind fog of where this Test match is, and we've had a little bit of time to digest it. Where do you see how it's all played out?
Yeah, we spoke over, didn't we? And you said England should have won, or should they have won? I said I don't think they should have, but I think they could have. And what I mean by that is it needed one more batter to get in and get a score in the first innings or the second. And I just think we let India's lead get ever so slightly too much in their second innings. So I don't think it's England should have won. I think there were opportunities that were missed that meant they could have won.
Paul, good evening to you. As a coach, are you feeling, you're thinking, come on, what might have been?
Yeah, I think you are, but you also, I got up this morning at 4 o'clock thinking it was a chance.
We're going to knock off 400.
What am I thinking? I set my alarm for 4 o'clock and I sat there watching the first hour thinking there's a chance, and then you lose those couple of wickets before lunch and you think, what were you thinking? Why did you think there was a chance? But they've gripped us all, haven't they? Yeah. I keep saying, and I've said this so many times in the last 18 months, 2 years, that it's one thing to talk about going out and playing that way, but to keep doing it and to maintain that way of playing, and to think that with 3 Test matches to go after the little mini golf break they're going to have, we've still got a chance of winning a Test series in India, which, let's be honest, 2 weeks ago, we were written off. 2 days into the first Test, we were written off. England had no chance of winning. Going to be another defeat. They win from an amazing position. And I think I agree with Tuffers and Alex that there was a slight feeling that opportunity missed. And I think that first innings batting, if England could have got another 75, 85 runs in that period, I think that would have made a huge difference. Because we saw how nervous the Indian team were, the way they batted in the second innings. They felt under real pressure to bat in that second innings. And the way they celebrated today, you could tell it was a big, big win for them.
Absolutely. And I could tell just by getting the wickets as well, that wicket of Crawley, the Ben Stokes run out and things like that. I've seen a lot of Indian teams in India with 400 lead in the fourth innings, and they cruise around. They're just waiting for the wickets to fall, and then they just sort of like, oh, well done, Ash, well done, so-and-so, well done, so-and-so. They were celebrating hard everything. And I think even, didn't Shubman Gill say that, we're about 70-30. England are 30% of winning this game, and they're chasing 400. So this so-called Bazball has sort of just rattled the Indian team a little bit, and it does that to teams that they just know that they're going to come from them, and if you don't get the wickets, you don't get that little bit of luck, they're going to knock it off. So it was great to see.
And that's what I love about this Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes era of cricket. Not only did they believe they can win from anywhere, and now the team do, they're making us believe it, but now the opposition believe it as well. So they're also playing mind games with the opposition. There's never a chance England were going to win that Test match. It would have been record-breaking, but England are breaking records, and it's brilliant.
There was never a chance, but there was.
Exactly.
There was.
Exactly.
I wish you told me that before I set my alarm last night at 4 o'clock. If you were that confident, I wouldn't have bothered.
Well,
I didn't.
Well, we will be getting the India perspective from Deep Das Gupta in a little while, but let's hear from the England camp then. Let's hear from their skipper, Ben Stokes.
Obviously, it's disappointing to lose. It always is. We always want to come out here and win. But I think the way in which we approached it is exactly what we are looking for. The result hasn't gone our way, but I think the way in which we pressed on in a sort of very high pressure situation actually brings the best out of us. It's not always going to work. And I was very happy with the way in which, Ben and Zach asserted their dominance last night, and then we continued that throughout the day and even late towards into the day. And, that's something that I'll always encourage our group to do, even if it looks like we're on the back foot.
If you'd got the target, it would have broken a whole host of records. Does it say a lot about what you guys have done over the past couple of years that last night there was a lot of people thinking that you were going to do that today?
Yeah, I think so. And to be honest, I think that the credit sort of has to go to the players in that sense. That I've just mentioned there that everyone's been going, what is Bazball? What actually is it? And I think it's our mentality and our way of playing, and the fact that you never look out on the field and think that we were ever behind the game, even if we are, from the scoreboard wise. And I guess we have so much belief in our own ability, so much belief in what we can accomplish out in the field, that I guess it sort of filters off to the people who support us. And 2-3 years ago, if that was a task that we had ahead of us, I don't think many people would have been thinking we would have stood a chance. So I think that's a huge testament to the players and the dressing room.
So what was the difference between the two sides on this occasion over the 4 days?
When you look at the scoreboard, you go, one of their openers gets a big double 100, their number 3 gets 100 when they're trying to set a total for us. In my mind, that's sort of where the game was won and lost. I just think that there's been some great cricket for people to be able to watch. You've seen some incredible young talent showcase what they're all about, and you've also seen the likes of Bumrah and Jimmy just show that it is very, very possible to be able to get wickets out in the subcontinent, even though it's sort of a spin-dominant country.
Is that the main thing that maybe you could have done better, just someone getting a big score like Jaiswal or Shubman did?
Well, again, that's just an easy comment to make. Every batter wants to go on and make those big scores. That's not always going to be the case. It's the way in which that we implement ourselves with the bat that will allow individuals to go on and make those big scores. Cricket's not as easy as just saying, I wish you went on and got a big score, because if it was that easy, everyone would do it, and it's called Test cricket for a reason.
You've got a break now, Ben. Is that would you rather go again next week?
No, I think it's welcome. You can't underestimate how, a 5-match Test series, the effect it does have. We've obviously only played 2, but this is a very long Test series, and I think this break is going to be very good for everyone. We've been out here for a long time, we've been away from families for a long time, so everyone in there having their partners come out, having their kids come out, I think it's a great time to sort of step away from what we've been doing, not think about cricket, but then obviously when we get back to Rajkot, we're preparing like we have done for every other game.
It's Ben Stokes speaking to BBC Sports chief cricket writer Stefan Schemmel. Tuffers, let's get into the batting then, because that's the area where England will be looking at and thinking, well, if we'd had one performance like Jaiswal or Shubman Gill, it could have been very, very different.
Yeah, they all got starts, didn't they? I think Zach Crawley played wonderfully well as well in both innings. He's, really put the Indian bowlers under pressure, especially up top, and the likes of Bumrah sort of got them rattled a little bit, Ben Duckett as well. But you're right, I think that they will be slightly looking out. I mean, I know Ben's going to answer the question from Stefan, well, it's not as easy and that and everything, but in India, we say it all the time, you know, those first 20 or 30 balls are difficult, you've got to get yourself in, and then when you do get yourself in, it does become easier, and you can start getting into partnerships and big partnerships, and it is difficult to break, even though the pitches are sort of spinning and bouncing a little bit. So they'll be looking at that, I'm sure. They'll just be a little bit disappointed if someone could have just got, 120, 130, 140, something like that, and just kicked on a little bit. It makes the world a difference. 60s and 70s don't really win your test matches over in India, but he's right in what he says. If no one wants to get out, but perhaps they can. Perhaps they just have to tweak that Bazball a little bit. That when you go in and you're on top sometimes, and you've got the field spread, just perhaps rein it back in and go down a couple of gears. Don't go for the high risk shot, and just get to that 100 and get past that, and then go again.
Paul?
Yeah, I agree with Tuffers on that. I think my biggest concern in the England team at the moment is the way that Joe Root's playing. He's frustrating me a little bit at the moment. And I know there was Bumrah bowled brilliantly at him in the first innings, but the second innings was a Root who wasn't trusting his defence, wasn't trusting his judgment, and was looking to every ball for 4 and 6. And actually, he scores quickly enough as it is. He scores off good balls. He gets the ball to backward point, gets off strike very quickly. He puts the bowlers under pressure, and then he creates 4 balls and boundary balls for himself. I think he's the one bloke in the team who can afford to play normally. I don't think he needs to be quite so frenetic. And I think he's the bloke for me in the last 3 test matches who's got to come back and actually hold the whole thing together. I think he's got to be England's glue that holds their batting together. Use his experience, use his nous, use his knowledge, and just calm a fraction. Because there was a period in Rooty's career where certainly when he was captain, if he didn't get runs, England didn't get runs. And he batted for the team, and that got him in a hole. I think now he just looks like he's a little bit caught and actually how he wants to play. And I think take a bit of a leaf out of Stokes' book. When Stokes first goes in, he plays very calmly, very sensibly, and builds an innings. I don't see any reason why Joe Root shouldn't do exactly the same.
It took Stokesy a while to get that, though, didn't it? There's a couple of matches here and there where he'd get out and you're thinking, what on earth are you doing? And he's saying, well, I want the lads to play positively, so I'm going to have to. But in this test match, in that second innings, there was no difference between how Rooty batted and how Rehan batted. And we were laughing at the way the Night Watchman batted the night before, because it was hilarious to watch, because we were like, what is happening?
But is that Stokes' approach in the initial days of Bazball a couple of years ago, wasn't that just the marker that said, I am going to be so fearless and I'm leading the way, and actually it doesn't matter if I get out because I'm just setting this example?
He scored 16 off of 9 balls, didn't he? And I think it went 4-6, 4-6, 1 out. You know what I mean? That isn't Joe Root. Joe Root is a class sort of... he's a busy cricketer, 1s and 2s, sweep shots. As Farb says, then the 4 ball comes away. He's not this big power hitter running down the pitch. And I just think that it was I was listening to Ben Stokes afterwards. He said, Rooty will be disappointed because he doesn't like leaving anything out there. And I think that he'll be looking at himself going, crikey, I left it out there a bit today. If I'd have just been a bit more measured and just got myself into an innings, get yourself involved in that partnership, rotate, strike, he's such a class player that I think he is a little bit sort of gone up. His stats have gone up under Ben Stokes. But in India, I think sometimes you've just got to give yourself a bit of a breath. Get yourself in and play your natural game. And his natural game is that. It's not a great big sort of smasher of the cricket ball. So, he'll have things to think about. But, he's a bright ball and he's got loads of runs and he's a fabulous player.
I think you're absolutely right. And his stats have gone up, though, because of the pressure off him and Stokesy backing him to go and play. As I say, I think for a period as captain, he batted for the team and he was worried about getting out and that got caught in 2 minds. I think the caught in 2 minds now is just about how to be positive.
Tempo.
And,
his tempo.
And absolutely. And you made a great point about the best players can go up and down the gears and they understand what does the team need, what does the situation need from them at that particular time. And look, crikey, there's every chance that Joe Root will peel off 100 after 100 after 100 in the last 3 games and steer England to a 3-1 victory or 4-1 victory, whatever it'll be. So, crikey, I'm not knocking Joe. I'd just like to see him perhaps use his experience a little bit more and be a little bit smarter at the crease.
The engine room I mentioned, Alex.
So, Henry,
yeah, go
Henry,
on.
Can I just can I just ask Farbs?
You've got your hand up like the back of the class.
Excuse me, sir. Farbs, are you at home?
No, I'm in my office at Hove, looking over the pitch.
I thought you were still there. I can see whiteboards in your office, and I was thinking, my God, has he got whiteboards at home with like cricket positions written on them and everything?
No, I'm actually in my office at Hove, overlooking the pitches. I can't see much, though. It's a bit dark out there.
Sorry, Henry.
Not at all. I was wondering the same question, but I wasn't quite as bold as you to ask it.
I just thought you were in a very bright room somewhere.
So, I mean, you look at the way that the games have played out so far, and there have been some standout innings, Alex. Ollie Pope, clearly one of those in the last game with that 190-odd. But the game just gone, Root, Bairstow, Ollie Pope. Bairstow's 25 in the first innings, the highest score out of all of them. That's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because obviously you don't want to rely on your top 3 to get all your runs, or your openers. And Zach Crawley was fantastic in this Test match, but he wasn't backed up by anybody. So I think for me, England will look on that and say, okay, every single batter's got starts at some point in this series already. How are we not going on and getting big scores? What is our problem? I know Bumrah bowled fantastically well in the first innings of the Test match just gone. Outstanding. And a bowler bowling the way he did at 90 mile an hour, he's going to be hard to play. But how can we then score runs from the other end and just not get out, or just little things? But the highest score being 25, that is obviously a problem for England for this Test match.
No problems at the top of the order, though. That partnership between Crawley and Duckett, looking at the stats, 5 of the last 6 innings there's been a 50 partnership. Crawley averaging 62 since the Ashes Test at Headingley. I think we're all a little surprised it's worked as well as it has, aren't we, Toffers?
Well, yes and no. Well, obviously, Brendan McCullum and Stokesy knew it would be. I think perhaps it's probably the best time to go out and have a bat in India. Yeah. The ball's new. It isn't reverse swinging. It isn't spinning and keeping low. And so, but the guys have, really taken the game to India, and you can see it's rattled them. 100 for 1 in India. It's an absolute sort of perfect start. But then you've got to just safeguard about the Ashwins, about when it starts reverse swinging, because as we say, you lose wickets in clusters over in India, and it's very difficult to get starts. So when you do get a partnership, and you're getting on top, and you get the field spread, just be mindful not to play that risky shot, not to play that sort of come down the track or something like that. Knock it around a little bit, because it wears the opposition down. But no, they've been fantastic up top. I've been so impressed with Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett. Absolutely flourishing that opening partnership.
I asked Alex before we came into the studio, what would you have done facing Jasprit Bumrah? And since we got 2 of England's finest number 11s here in Toffers and Alex, I mean, what do you do? In 9 wickets in that Test match, I mean, that's almost as good a seam bowling performance as we've seen in India, isn't it?
Absolutely. And just a little shout out for Jimmy Anderson here as well. He bowled wonderfully well as well. Yeah. So it does, there is a place here for seam bowling in India, and Bumrah bowled brilliantly. When you're getting it reversing like that, it's very difficult, because his natural angle is a little bit Courtney Walshy, if you know what I mean, Farbs, and he sort of like looks to push everything in, and then the real quality reverse swing bowlers do have that ability to then shape it away from the right-hander. But also what he does, that I've noticed, is that ball that knocked every stump of Ollie Pope's out of the ground.
What a great photo.
It was amazing. But it was his quickest ball he bowled. And I was talking to Deep, actually, and he's very good at changing his paces. And the way he lets go of the ball, it's sort of like past the sort of horizontal up there, and it's in front of you. So you think that it's going to be short, and then all of a sudden it pops out like a sort of bowling machine at 90 mile an hour, and it's on you and it's through you. So he's a very skillful bowler, great in those conditions, and as you say, India looked to 2 or 3 people to really stand up, and he really did stand up. Without Bumrah bowling that spell in the first innings, I think we might have gone on and won that Test match.
You'd agree with that, Paul? I mean, from a coach's perspective, he's the dream weapon to have, isn't he?
He is, and the great thing about him, as Tuffer says, he can go through the gears with his pace. He's got that extraordinary Yorker that he bowls. He doesn't bowl too many short balls, but he gets great carry and zip off the surface. And I think also for some of the batters, they find him quite hard to line him up. Because there are certain bowlers that no matter how fast they bowl, you can see the ball the whole time. It's quite easy to get into a position to line up. Seeing it's one thing, playing it's a different matter. But actually with Bumrah, he's not easy to pick up. He's quite a difficult bloke to actually see. A bit like Wasim Akram in the day when he used to come from behind his shoulder. And Tuffers and I had a very scary experience with him at Uxbridge one game. Where we both wanted to stand at the non-strikers end because Wasim was bowling a little bit quick, and we were deciding who would play Gary Yates bowling his off-spin the other end, and who would play was at the other end, and I lost that one, Tuffer. So thanks for that. But he's not easy to pick up, Bumrah. But as Tuffer said, he's really deceptive in the lengths that he bowls, but he gets great bounce off the surface. I mean, also, talking about Indian pitches, he gets unbelievable bounce.
Yeah, very, very skillful. And then also you throw in to that, Farbs, a little bit of a stuttery run-up. Yeah. Sort of, you're used to seeing AD comes cruising in, Waqar Younis coming running in, Brett Lee. He's just, and then wallop, it's down on you. So you throw in that reverse swing ability and skill and cleverness and that slower ball he has as well. It must be an absolute nightmare to face.
We'll get on to what England can do during their break in due course, Alex, but one of the conversations has got to be how they counteract this.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, and they will be talking about it, but also bowlers are allowed to have good spells, and they played him pretty well in the first Test match. He didn't go and get 9 for in the first Test. He's just had a good game, which is allowed, and I think they won't be thinking too much about it, because once you start targeting certain players and going, they're a real problem, that is not the Baz ball. That's not how Baz and Ben play Test cricket. They think about themselves, they're positive, and they move forward. They'll almost forget about that great spell from Bumrah, because that's not who they are anymore. That's who they were.
And that's
talking about Joe Root as well. Talking about Joe Root as well. As soon as he comes out the bat, they put Bumrah on. Simple as that. So Root, he's going to have a little think about how he's going to start sort of like going about his business, because at the moment you just feel he's got the wood on Rooty.
So, Alex, as somebody that has seen a lot of what England's spin attack have tried to do over the last few weeks, and also in comparison to what they've tried to do in India in years gone by, it feels like they've found a formula that's working.
Who'd have thought we'd be talking about that? Because in the Ashes, we dragged Moeen Ali out of retirement because we couldn't find a spinner. And now we've got loads of them that we can pick. I mean, and they've all done a pretty good job, Tom Hartley in his debut, he didn't have a good first innings, he came back and he proved what he can do. Ryan Ahmed was so consistent in his first spell in this second Test match, and then Bashir comes onto the scene, having faced all the problems that he had getting into the country, and he settles into his spell beautifully, barely bowls a bad ball. And that's without Jack Leach as well. And this, we were talking about this England side during the Ashes going, spin's a real problem, we've not got a spinner. I know we're in India now, but now we seem to have too many spinners to pick, and we're going with no seamers.
Tough, as you spoke ahead of the series, Tom Hartley 6'3", that extra height, something different. Sure, Bashir, similar sort of height. It feels like there's variety.
No, absolutely, and you've got to say a couple of good picks from McCullum and Stokes. They've obviously seen what they need in India, sort of like tall bowlers who can bowl it into the pitch, bowl it at good speed. Don't necessarily need too much sort of flight and guile in India. You just need to plough away and hit those lines and legs at good speed, like Tom Hartley did. I think they've gone out there. It's a little bit like a Marcus Trescothick pick and a Michael Vaughan pick, isn't it? They've just sort of had a little look, see what they fancy, and had the courage of their conviction. And I was absolutely delighted for Tom Hartley, and bowled well again in the second Test match. Very difficult sometimes to back it up because they've had a little look at you and they sort of like work you out a bit. So for him to carry on bowling, it's been good. And in a funny sort of way, I don't want to say it, but has put a little bit of pressure on Jack Leach now. You know, he's been England's number one and Ben Stokes has been right behind him, and rightly so. But now, you know, there are competition. They can't play 4 spinners, can they? They can't play
this
all
England
4.
team will do anything, won't they?
They might do.
I think the competition when it comes to Jack Leach for me is not the bowling. I think Jack Leach's bowling over the last 18 months has become so much better. But what Tom Hartley has that Jack Leach doesn't is the batting and the fielding. And that makes a huge difference when it comes to picking teams. You know, gone are the one-dimensional cricketers. You know, they're a thing of the past. So for me, Jack Leach is still the better bowler, but Tom Hartley can hold his own with the bat.
He's from Lancashire. He's called Hartley. But to confirm...
We are related. No, we're not
No,
related.
okay, fine, right.
We don't have like some sort of farm that breeds left-arm spinners up in the north. We're not related.
It's what everyone always asks. Alex, Paul, what fascinated me about that first Test match in particular, and we've seen the benefits of it as we've gone through the series. 38 runs came off the first 19 balls that he bowled in Test match cricket, Tom Hartley. First ball went for 6, and we've seen how damaging that can be, particularly for a young spin bowler. But they stuck with him. And he's bowled really, really well. He won the first Test match for England. And from a man management point of view, it is absolutely archetypal man management in terms of getting the best from what you've got with your team.
Absolutely. And you know, Jeetan Patel spoke at the end of the second day and he talked positively, courageously about his young spinners. He talked about how everyone was in the rooms, getting around them, supporting them. And what it showed me a couple of things, really. One, the selection was absolutely spot on. Rob Key talked about he wanted people to talk about what players could do in the future, not what they can do now. Don't tell me about what their stats are now. Tell me what they can do in the future. And I thought that was a really telling message. The support from the captain and coach is absolutely crucial. You know, when you go into a game, you want to land your first ball on a length when you're making your debut and it goes over long on for 6. You know, crikey, that's a long way back. And a lot of people have, you know, really buckled under that pressure. It tells you a lot about them as characters. And it also, I think this is where, for me, the 100 comes into play. And the 100's miles away from Test match cricket, but actually they're playing in front of full houses, live on television, being scrutinised, and they cope with that really, really well. And I think that the 100 has been really helpful for someone like Hartley, who came to my attention in that competition, and actually think, well, if he can do it in that, he can do it in any competition.
No, absolutely. And I think that Tom actually said before the tour, he said, well, listen, every time I bowl, they're coming for me. You know what I mean? And that is because of white ball cricket. They're always coming for me. So if anything, to get a few maidens in and bowl a few dot balls, he said it'll be an absolute luxury, you know. So I think it took him that little bit of time just to realise that, I think, in that first Test match. And it was one, I mean, I was sort of scratching my head with Ben Stokes there. I was going, the bowling to a left-hander on his debut, you know, and after 3 or 4 overs, you know, I'm sure there was loads of people going, get him off, give him a rest. No, I'm going to keep him on. I'm going to and I think that worked. It really did. I mean, remember poor old Simon Kerrigan, you know, 2 overs and, you know, whipped down to third man and never seen again. Yeah. So a brilliant piece of sort of captaincy there, I think, by Ben Stokes as well.
And that's the key thing. And you two as spinners, when you've got a captain moving your field as much as he does, bringing people up when you think you shouldn't, putting people back when you shouldn't. I mean, that must be quite unsettling for them as spinners as well. But it shows the trust they have in him because they know that he's got an awful lot of trust in them as bowlers and the spinners. That must go a long way to settling you on the field.
Yeah, I cannot tell you how much confidence a captain like Ben Stokes would give you as a young player. Not only with the batting, and the batters don't feel like if they fail, that's it, they're going to be dropped, but also with the ball, you know. Previous captains would have taken Tom Hartley off after 3 or 4 overs and said, oh, mate, this isn't quite working. Go and gather your thoughts, maybe speak to Jeets off the field and come back on, and then we'll give you another spell. Stokes has said, I don't care if you're going at 10 and over. I back you, and I back you to bowl in this situation. And you could almost see Tom Hartley relax into his spell going, I'm still bowling. The captain's kept me on. I've still got my attacking field. He believes in me. This team believe in me. And then once he was into his spell, he was brilliant.
And this is the thing that England have got to manage, because you look at the experience relatively of England's spin attack. 3 Test caps, 85 first-class wickets between them before this series. That's Rehan, Bashir and Hartley. In this Test match is a great stat from Yas Rana of Wisden. 15 wickets at an average of 33. Compare that with Ashwin, Kuldeep and Akshar Patel, 9 wickets and an average of 40. I mean, who saw that coming?
Absolutely. I know, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing. And we've managed to get 20 wickets both times, you know, which is a big feat, you know, and you're up against some world-class spinners on their home patch, so to speak. And the guys have done brilliantly. They really, really have. They've put them under pressure and they've got them out. Okay, perhaps might have, you know, gone for a few runs here and there, but at the end of the day, they're taking wickets and putting pressure on them. And never saw that coming. You know, we're at the moment, and they can take a lot of heart from that. We are sort of out bowling them in that department, which, as you say, never saw that coming.
And to win test matches, you've got to bowl teams out, and you've got to bowl them out twice. And England, that is something they've done consistently since Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum took over.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Baz ball in the field.
Well, it permeates everything, doesn't it? Because it gives belief, and we think about crashing 4s and 6s, but it's much more than that, Paul, because it's creating a sense of belief.
Well, it's, you know, as Alex is saying there, it's confidence for the bowlers to be able to bowl knowing they're not being taken off. Fielders attacking the ball and absolutely trying for everything. Batters knowing that they're going to be given plenty of opportunity. And when you've got a captain and a coach encouraging you to go and play that way, you know, after 3 days, well, if they get 600, we'll chase 600. We'll just go for it. That's how we play. You know, and that's a fantastic. And I can't emphasise how important that is, but how tough it is. It's really difficult it's easy to talk about it, to actually do it and to maintain it and back it up. And to see, you know, you watch Ray and Ahmed playing and he just looks like, you know, he's a young man just having fun, batting, bowling, fielding, he's having fun. And, you know, we finger spinners generally bowl well in India. For a young wrist spinner to bowl as well as he has done in India, absolutely outstanding. But it just shows the support, the guidance that he's getting, but the environment they're playing in is absolutely brilliant. And it's, you know, as Ben said earlier in the day, it's having a knock-on effect because we're all falling into it and we're all thinking, this is brilliant and we've got a chance here. So in that changing room, it must be a sensational place to be.
And even if you can't contribute or you're not contributing with the bat and the ball, they are in the field, so you can see them running and attacking the ball. I don't know if anyone saw the howler that Zach Crawley dropped in the slips, and you know you can see like heads could drop previously, and they've all got a smile on their face. They're all going, "I can't believe you just dropped that, mate." And it's almost like they're not taking the mick out of it, but they're showing how relaxed they are and saying it's just a game of cricket, doesn't matter. You know, we move on.
Let's get the India perspective. Former India wicketkeeper Deep Das Gupta is with us as well. Good evening to you, Deep.
Hey, good evening.
Come on then. So we heard Dinesh Karthik on the TMS podcast on BBC Sounds earlier saying that Bazball and everything is sort of moving right through English cricket and extending further into Indian cricket as well. And it seems a wild thought that India would be delighted to be beating England when they'd set them 400 to win. But it feels as though they thought, wow, we've done really well to win that game.
True. I mean, let's not forget, England on the fourth innings got 300 plus, right? So, I mean, that's a win in itself. So, obviously didn't go on to win the test match, but then were very, very close to getting 300 in the fourth innings, which is difficult in itself. So that's one thing. The other thing about Bazball is, it's like imagine yourself in school being assessed based on effort and your mindset, not the end result. So what has been happening over the years?
Wish I had that.
Yeah, I mean, you've been assessed on your end result. You get 100, you get a 5 wicket. So now things have changed a bit, and now you're being assessed on your effort and your mindset. And that is a huge change, and that is a paradigm shift from what we've done over the years traditionally. Okay, how many runs have you got? What's your average like? So the assessment is not based on that anymore. It's based on your mindset. It's based on your effort, how you playing for you, whether you're playing for your team or not, or whether you're playing for your own averages or your own numbers. So I think that is a paradigm shift, and we've got to address it, and we've got to kind of embrace it. As far as playing that brand of cricket, it is a natural progression, because if you look at the next generation, like Alex's generation or Tuffer's or my generation, we grew up playing red ball cricket. But this generation is growing up playing T20 cricket. So I think it is sooner or later, every country is going to embrace this approach because that's what they have. Because as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, if you're growing up on white ball cricket, that's the skill set that you're going to develop. That's going to be your strength. And more often than not, as teams, no matter which country you are, whatever team you are, you want to play on your strengths. So I think it's a natural progression, which is kind of, heightened on or kind of, helped with this whole baseball concept. But sooner or later, this was going to happen. If you look at let's look at the decisions in Test match cricket in last 2-3 years. Earlier on, now draws are unheard of unless you have a break because of weather or rain or whatever. Draws are unheard of. So obviously we're moving towards that, but with baseball and this approach of the English test team, obviously that has been quickened, that whole process.
Deep, Tuffers here, and that is what sort of Jazzwall was all about, wasn't it? Tell us a little bit more about him and what his sort of journey's been.
Yeah, so obviously we've heard of his humble background, the fact that he's not from Mumbai, but he came over and he lived in a tent. Anyone who's been to Mumbai has seen the Maidan and the tents in there, so he's been there. He was with his uncle, who's... again, a snack food seller, a pani puri seller on the roadsides. And he used to help him every evening because he had, obviously he was there living with him kind of. So from there, he is where he is. But I think the change to a great extent has been brought about by Rohit, the captain, because he wants this team to play in a certain way. And I think you can see in his own batting, the way he bats in every format, whether it's T20, we saw that in the World Cup as well. He wants this team of his to play a certain way. And that's where I think someone like Yashasvi, and let me say this, someone like Yashasvi, obviously, he's made there's a huge improvement in his game from what I saw him 2 years ago, and I'm sure all of you must have seen. He's worked on his strength. The other important thing is his technique. He's worked on it unlike most other power hitters, he is very good through his offside. You see, most of the power hitters are good through mid-wicket, mid-on, and, to the leg side. But because the fact that he's worked on his technique and he keeps his shape longer, so he can go through offside a lot more and a lot easier than some of the other big hitters or power hitters. So I think someone like Yashasvi is the next generation. And the other thing from an Indian perspective, let's not forget this Indian side is going through a transition. And it's not easy for these youngsters coming through because someone like they've been preferred over Cheteshwar Pujara, Ajinkya Rahane. Some of them are aware that Virat will be back sooner or later and their place is questionable. So there are a lot of these question marks as far as the Indian batting order is concerned. And by the way, Ajinkya Rahane and Pujara are still playing first-class cricket. It's not that they've given up, so these guys have a clear path ahead of them. So they are still playing cricket. They're still playing first-class cricket and scoring runs. So, the batting order, as far as India is concerned, is obviously going through a transition period.
Deep, we've had a lot of conversation about how England's impact is somehow rattling India and panicking how they're approaching things. Is that overstating it, or is there a bit of a sense that this is a different England team?
This is definitely a different England team. There is absolutely no two ways about it. I don't know whether it's overstated or not. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement around this English test side, and which is brilliant for cricket and test cricket especially. And I'm all for it because the excitement that this English side has brought to test cricket is quite revolutionary.
But is it worrying India in this series, do you think?
It is to a certain extent. I'll be very, it's quite evident as well. Look at that innings from Ashwin, the end of the second innings. Because even though India had a lead of over 350, but you still were like a little apprehensive. 350, fourth innings in India, you're like, oh, that's easy, right? But you're also mindful of how England's playing, and you're never sure. And India's been on the receiving end not too long ago in Birmingham. Last summer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And Paul, you think back to that tour of 2016 when you were part of the England coaching setup, and there were those long days where Karen Nair scored 300 and those exhausting days in the field where it felt like it was two sides that weren't in the same league. But it doesn't quite feel like that now.
It definitely does. I mean, we felt that perhaps we competed for the first day and a half, 2 days, and then almost it was a inevitability that the Indians would just go away from us and take the game away from us. I can think of 3 or 4 games on that series it happened. But now you watch them, and I definitely think India are starting to think a lot more about how England play. They're starting to think a lot more about how they play the game rather than it being a foregone conclusion. And you can see they do feel under pressure. And that's because of the way that England plays. So all the conversations we've been having about we'd like to see them rein it in, we'd like to see them a bit more sensible. Actually, that's what's putting the opposition under pressure because there's almost an unknown about how England are going to take them on. And that's a great place to be.
Can I also add something to that?
Go on.
Yeah, so the other important thing is because there's not a lot of, this is an inexperienced and new Indian batting lineup, the pitches are pretty good to bat on. It's nowhere near how the pitches were in 2021.
And that was a huge difference, wasn't it?
Right. So if you think about it, 2021, there were tougher pitches than what we've seen so far in the first 2 test matches. That's also got to do because obviously from an Indian perspective, we're looking at, these are young batters. They're just starting off in test match cricket and we don't know what you'll get out of them at this level. So obviously, if you look at the pitches so far, they've been really good pitches to bat on. Nowhere near what it was in 2021.
And is that because you think that Paul, go on.
No, I was going to say that you mentioned just now about how Rohit wants to play and how he wants his players to play. I was quite surprised that a Pujara or someone of that experience didn't get brought into the team. But again, it shows that perhaps the Indian team are looking to the future. They're looking at this as an opportunity to bring exciting players of their own into the side, which tells you an awful lot about the depth. We know that India has an awful lot of depth to their side, but it also tells you about their mindset and how they're actually looking to play Test match cricket at the moment.
Do we know anything more deep about whether the likes of KL Rahul, Jadeja, Kohli, we're going to see it? Because they've got this 10-day gap now, so there's time for the potential for a shifting around of the squad.
So what I hear, KL might be available. Virat, they're still waiting on Virat because obviously Virat's got nothing to do with his injury or anything of that sort, but it's some personal issues that he's got. So I think they're still waiting on Virat, but I think KL should be available for the rest of the season, at least for the next test match. I don't think Jadeja might be available. So, yeah, there you go. I think KL should be available for the next test match.
Alex, England head to Abu Dhabi and have this 10-day break. The impression we get is it's not going to be overly cricket heavy, and there'll be inevitably those that say, well, it should be, but you are hard pushed to fault England's methods given how the last couple of years have gone.
Yeah, from what Ben Stokes said to Stefan Shemmelt just earlier, it didn't sound like he was going to play much cricket. It sounded like the families were going to go out to Abu Dhabi, they were going to have a break, and then he literally said, we'll restart when we come back to India. So if you were to put it into context, if they were at home playing a test match at Southampton and they had a 10-day break, they would all go home and see their families. So I suppose they're going to Abu Dhabi and flying their families out to Abu Dhabi and almost having some time off there. These players need time off. That they might do a little bit of cricket, but from what it sounds like is that it's very much just going to be time away.
How would it have been in yesteryear, Paul? Would you have had this break? Would you have done something like that?
No, we'd have been in India for 5 or 6 weeks, prepping, practicing, and then losing 5-0. So the thought of I've been thinking about this all day. The closest I ever got was with Sri Lanka. We went to the West Indies. We played in Trinidad. Guyana. And we were going to play in Trinidad. We went to Tobago to play a 3-day game against West Indies A. They couldn't put a team out, and we had 5 days on Tobago playing golf and sunbathing.
Perfect.
It worked though, because we got beaten in the next test, so it really worked for us. I think England take a lot of criticism in the last 18 months, 2 years, but actually before this series, they went to Abu Dhabi. They had the conditions they wanted to practice and prep in, rather than relying on what India supplied for them. And it's working. I think Alex is right. I think they'll go there. They'll have 6 or 7 days where they won't do anything to do with cricket. A little bit of fitness work, stay in the gym a bit, get back, and then start the tour again when they get back to Rajkot. That'll be their plan.
And I'm all for them going to Abu Dhabi, because if they're in, let's say, Mumbai for 10 days and 10 days off, great city to be in, but these lads cannot leave the hotel without getting mobbed and without getting recognised every single second of the day. So their time is being stuck inside a hotel. All they can do is sit by the pool. Yes, their families, their kids will all be there, but if they go to Abu Dhabi, they can go and have freedom and go and live normal lives for 10 days and almost forget about what cricket really is like in India, because it's something that it's really hard to describe unless you've experienced it.
Tuffers, what would you have wanted, do you reckon?
Well, I think they're doing it perfectly. Oh, blimey. I would have been running to the airport. I would have been in a tuk-tuk now, going to the airport. I think that's the way it is now. And you've got to have a sort of a strength of character. When we played and we'd lost a game, it was all about then sort of like going to the net so the press and the media can see you and all, because if you'd had a day off, it was like, oh, nobody cares and everything. I think that's, again, is Stokes and McCullum have said, listen, we don't care about what the press say. This is the way we do it. And he's right, playing in India is very tough. It's gruelling. 5 test match series, you need some time just to switch off, enjoy yourself, recharge, come back and go again. So, yeah, I think they've got it right, and I'm sure they'll be doing little bits and pieces over there, but mainly the golf and the pool, I reckon.